Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So in this video, I'm obviously having a little bit of fun with the title. The title will be something along the lines of, how are you half-asking your relationship? So I want to talk a little bit about, kind of what I mean by this term, kind of how I landed on that. And then, kind of getting into, kind of what this is about. So I was meeting with a client this week, a couple, and they're doing wonderful work, and they were kind of building on work that we've been doing. They were putting into words kind of their struggle with fully reaching towards one another. And I love this word reach, and it's some of the language that I use with clients. Sometimes we, in the counseling field, we might also call this making a bid, like a bid for connection. But reach has just, I don't know, just a wonderful, like, kind of tangible, visceral quality. It's just this sort of extending a hand and like, will you take my hand? Will you meet me here? And so they were kind of using this language of like, they're like, yeah, we both kind of tend to half reach towards one another. And so we were kind of talking about that and, kind of working through some of that. And at some point in the conversation, my brain changed it to half ask. And because we're talking about sort of this, and we're asking for connection, we're asking for something that we want or that we need. And so in that, I said it out loud, and then it's like, wait a minute, and like, the connotation of the double entendre of half-assing, I don't know. I thought that was really fun, but I think it's really a great kind of memorable way of thinking about this, because we all do this. We all half-ask in our relationships, whether it's in partner relationships or in friendships, all sorts of contexts. And so I want to talk some about why we do this, kind of what's going on with this, and then, kind of where do we go from there, right? Like, so, this is a normal human thing because it's vulnerable to ask for things. It's vulnerable to put our desires out there into the world. And honestly, it's vulnerable even to let ourselves know how much we want something, to let ourselves be aware of like, this matters to me. Because it's the same kind of risk, the same category of risk in whether it's, letting ourselves know or additionally letting someone else know. The risk there is, what if I don't get what I'm wanting? What if I don't get what I need? What if I'm not met in a good way? Like the fear of the pain of that. And really, I would say often it's the fear of pain we've already experienced, so it's like, because if we've never discovered that, we can experience pain around this, then we don't know to be afraid. I mean, that's one of the lovely things. And when you watch young children, is like the places where they haven't yet been hurt and they haven't yet learned like, oh, life can hurt me in this way, or like, certain kinds of objects are not good to put in my mouth, or, like, they're trying to figure out how the world works, and so there's a wonderful innocence there. And as we all grow up, right, like, I mean, life is broken. None of us has a perfect life experience, and so we all encounter ways in which like, there's pain in the world and things can hurt really, really badly. That in of itself doesn't actually have to be that problematic. It's not fun, but if we have adequate support in a moment of pain, then we're able to metabolize it and move through it, and then it doesn't become stuck as trauma. So I talk about in the video, what is trauma, about kind of sort of part of how I define trauma is that it's anything we can't stay present to, that we're not able to feel the full experience of and like move through it, metabolize through it, and then be able to move forward. And so if we're not able to feel all of it, then some of it's going to stay stuck. Some of it's going to reside in our system energetically and physiologically. And so Yeah, so that's part of then where we start to learn to hedge our bets. We start to learn like, ooh, I better not risk too much here because not just because I've been hurt before, but I've been hurt before, and though we're not conscious of this, I haven't finished metabolizing some of that prior hurt, and so it lingers in a way of like, oh, I can't bear that again. The reality is we actually can bear it, but we need some help to metabolize that past pain so that we can discover, actually, I can live through this. Not fun, can be quite difficult, can be excruciating, and yet I can live through it and I can be okay. And I can even have good things and have a good life. Um, so this is a part of, I mean, this kind of hints at some of the cost of this, right? Like if I'm only half asking, in all sorts of places in my life, then I am lowering the possibilities of the good that can enter in. I'm lowering the possibilities of the good, both in that by not asking, I'm reducing the chances that the good will come, right? But even if the good comes unasked for, there's a decent probability that I won't be able to take all of it in because I'm not opening my heart to it. Like this is an interesting principle about life, is that like if I'm not able to be vulnerable enough to actually own that, like I want this, I long for this, or this is a need, that then I'm not going to be able, to that degree to which I can't own that and like face that and bear the vulnerability of that. Then even if the good that I long for, that I secretly long for, shows up, I will partly reject it. I won't let all of it in. I'll be like, well, I'll take this much, but I won't risk like trusting the rest of it, because to do that opens me up to the past pain that I haven't finished dealing with. I haven't finished metabolizing. Because here's the thing about something good is that we can lose it, like it can go away. It can turn out to be bad somehow, right? Like it can betray us. Like there's all sorts of risk there. Um, I've been noticing this with myself, like in ways as I am healing and growing in various ways. There are places in my life, there are relationships, one of which is relationships with my therapist. I work with actually with two different therapists currently. And so with each of them, I'm noticing these ways in which I'm able to let them really matter to me. And this is also happening in my various friendships. Like I'm able to like risk the vulnerability of like, wow, you are so important to me. You have so much impact on me, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a dear friend. Like I've healed enough, not that I'm done healing, but I've been with certain areas of grief and sorrow and loss and betrayal. I've been with some of that stuff enough that I can risk letting this really matter to me right now. And like, and it's, oh my gosh, it feels so good. Pardon me. Like it's so nourishing to be able to be like, you are so special to me, and thank you for loving me in this way. Thank you for meeting me in this way. Thank you for being my friend or being my therapist or whatever the role is, that person is, whatever it is they mean to me. Like, and I can risk that. I can risk being honest with myself and with them because I'm not so afraid of the potential loss. Like I'm not so afraid of somehow it going bad or somehow am I losing this person. Like those things would be hard and incredibly hard in some cases. I mean, like I would be so sorrowful and I would weep and I would like be very sad. I mean, to put it mildly. But I've practiced enough, right? Like I've practiced enough being with those kinds of places that it doesn't scare me like it once did. It's not that it wouldn't be hard, not that it wouldn't be excruciating in some cases, but I could do it because I've done it. I've done it many, 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 many times. And so this kind of harkens to, okay, so what's, part of the answer to this is we got to face our pain, right? But, let me back up a little bit because like, okay, how do we get there, right? Like, so we start by, we got to start recognizing where are the places where I'm not fully asking. I'm not being fully honest with myself or, a partner, or a friend about what I'm really feeling, what I'm longing for, what I'm wanting. I'm not letting those wants and needs fully exist in the relationship. Now, I want to be clear here. Letting them fully exist does not mean turning them into demands. I mean, this is a mistake that I think that our culture makes a lot of times, is that we kind of think, oh, well, we shouldn't suppress things, which was right. It's not good to suppress things. But then it's like, okay, well, if I have a want or I have a need, then like you damn well better meet it. And it's like, well, the other person may not be able to meet it. I mean, not because they're mean, not because of, they're trying to hurt us, but they just may not. We don't know, right? Like that's part of the risk, is we got to find out. But that's not like growth in this isn't contingent on whether the other person can meet it. It's more contingent on, do I have people in my life who can be with me in the vulnerability and the risk and the sadness of having these longings and these wants and these needs and them not being fully met. That's learning to sort of bear and be with and take responsibility for my wants and needs. And so that's like working towards being able to bring to a friend or a partner and say, hey, I really wish that like, if I text you that like you wouldn't wait 2 weeks to text me back. Like I would love it if you could just even say, hey, I got your text. I would really love to talk. I'm really swamped right now. And so it's going to be a bit before I can really, really reply. Like I really like some kind of acknowledgement. Like it just doesn't feel good when there's just no reply for weeks on end. Like that feels really yucky to me. I'm trying to believe you don't intend anything, personal by that. I'm trying to work with my parts and whatnot, but I just need you to know this doesn't feel good to me. I feel, kind of uncared for and unimportant to you. And so that, right, like I'm not demanding. I'm not, I'm being really careful to not put onto them the story that wounded parts of me might be imagining or wanting to, kind of create, make up. But I'm letting them know how it feels, which is all I can do. And I'm being honest that this is important to me. It bothers me enough that I'm saying something, right? Like, and then I have to grapple with that. Like, they may not understand. They may not take it seriously. They may mishear me. In this example, they may not reply, right? Like they may do the very thing that I was like, I really really wish you wouldn't do that. And then I have to resist, especially if it's like a texting situation. I mean, that's its own, kind of tangent, right? But I have to resist like sort of imagining that I know what's going on when it's like, well, I don't really know for certain. Like, so let's keep it simple. Let's say I'm having a real-time interaction. So, but it may not go great, right? Like it may not go terrible, like let's say they don't get defensive or something. That would be harder, right? But they may be like, I'm just really not good at that. And I'm sorry. I care about that hurts you. And it may still happen some. I'm going to try to work on it, but like the nature of how I work, like I'm really weak in that area and that sucks and it's not fair to you. So like that's an interesting example where like they're giving a healthy response that's acknowledging their weakness, acknowledging their responsibility, and being honest about they don't know if it's realistic that they're going to be able to make significant change on that in the near term, without blowing. And they're not blowing it off. They're not just like, well, this is just how I am. Tough cookies, right? Like they're taking it seriously, but they're being honest that they're not sure if they can meet it. And there's lots of things like this, right? Because this is part of why we half ask all of our relationships. Like none of us fully asks, right? Because none of us is fully healed, right? Like none of us is totally brave, in all areas all the time, right? We all hedge our bets. We all hold back, even from ourselves, like letting ourselves know that like, man, I really long for this, experience from this person or with this person, or I really, really want or really need like this to be a certain way. Because it's like we sense, at least unconsciously, in addition to having our wounding, we sense that like we're interacting with fellow humans and they may not be able to do some things that we want and need. And so like, well, shit, what do we do with that? Right? Like, I mean, our wounded story would want to turn that into a, well, therefore they don't care about us and screw them and da 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 da. And it's like, and in some cases, maybe the other person doesn't care, right? Like that is a real possibility, right? There are places, and I mean, I certainly have had my own experiences where I have invested too much in certain relational contexts. I don't just mean partner relationships, but I mean like all kinds of different relational things, like family relationships, friendships, where I was investing more than the other person wanted to invest, and I've had to grapple with my tendency to do that, and that I can have my wants and my desires and my needs, but I also have to grapple with what is this relationship actually, can it do right now, right? Like what is actually possible, and where is it at? My wanting it to be someplace else isn't going to make it be someplace else, and so I have to deal with the grief of that, right? Like I have to grapple with, like, in some cases, maybe this person doesn't care enough about, I get some clarity, right? Not just making up stories, but like through conversation and whatnot, realize like we're in really different places. Like, you really just want this to be an acquaintanceship, or in, like really ugly cases, like, maybe somebody's, they're caught up in their shit, and there's some yuckiness and meanness in terms of how they're treating me, and it's, it's very clear, and it's like, well, I that's not the kind of relationship dynamic I want. That's not, I'm not willing to do that. But I want to be sure that I'm not just setting limits out of reactivity, right? Again, the screw you, da da da, because that's like, well, I'm not actually coming from a healthy place there, right? Like I want to be dealing with my grief enough such that even in these extreme circumstances, I can come to some clarity of like, okay, it seems like we want really different things, and I think I need to put my energies elsewhere, as part of just respecting the reality of what is. So we sense that, right? Like that there, there's the possibility that our wants and needs may not be fully met, and that, like, and so in some cases that may mean I'm gonna lose that relationship. I'm gonna let that relationship go, and it's like, well, that's really freaking hard. There's a sadness to that. But there's also these situations where, kind of like I was modeling earlier, where someone is like, no, I want to be in this, where the friendship or partner relationship, and like that's a really difficult ask for me. Like I'm taking it seriously, and I'm not blowing it off, but I know myself, and I know my weaknesses and my limitations, and I'm probably never going to be strong at that. I mean, like I joke sometimes that like, I don't know, I can't remember if I've made this joke in any of these videos, but if everybody in the world was built like me, like we might not have roads, and we might not have like all sorts of interesting innovations. Not that I'm not creative, and not that I'm not capable of doing those kinds of labors, but I'm not naturally oriented towards those things. Like I'm so oriented towards, the human soul, and, the cultivation of how do we become more human. And so there are things that I neglect, in how I do life, because they're not a high enough priority. It's not that I don't think they don't matter, but they're just so way down there, right? Like, and so it's like, the world is made up of all sorts of different people, and it's good that we each are who we are, and our different personality mixes and our different strengths and weaknesses. Like we each are an integral part of the tapestry of our world, and so so it's like, there are some things that's like, like if somebody's like, I don't know, I need you to vacuum every day, it'd be like, I mean, I'm capable of that, but I'm capable of vacuuming, but it's like, I don't know if that's like realistic for me. Like it's just so low a priority, like I'll get a Roomba and I'll like, program it to like vacuum, and I can maybe do that. But like for me to take time out to where it's like, I'm going to vacuum, and it's not that it's like beneath me. It's just not what I'm attuned to. It's not what I just don't even think about it. I don't notice it. Whereas, for other, some people, it's like, they very much notice that, and they attend to that, and they, so they keep a very clean home, right? And like in some ways that I don't, honestly. Not that it's trashy, but it's like, but it's not as clean as some. um, and so it's like, yeah. So like, if I was having friends over regularly and they're like, I would want to like make it hospitable. And so I would be, my empathy would be moved to try to like be accommodating or something, or like with a partner or whatever. But it also is like, I don't know. I mean, my temperament and how I'm oriented, like I'm never going to notice these things naturally. Right. Like it's just not how I'm built. Um, and so, yeah, it's like these honest conversations, that we have with one another of like, and so then what do we do with that, right? Like somebody is sharing with us, I mean, I'm giving silly examples about vacuuming or whatever, that like, hey, this is important to me. And they're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to realistically achieve that to the level that is important to you. And so then we have to grapple with, okay, can I still feel connection with them, with this person in other ways? Can I still feel valued in other ways? Can I let that longing, that desire, that need matter within myself? Can I address that longing and desire and need in other ways? I mean, this is one of the things, I mean, in terms of thinking about partner relationships, like I really think that like partner relationships cannot be everything. I think they can be really rich relational contexts, but like we have got to have like many connections, many relationships. Like we are like, there's a phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. Like it takes a village to like raise an adult too. Like adults need like a rich web of interconnected relationships. We need rich community. Like it just like, there's not going to be a partner whom it's like, oh, I can get all the things, from you. Like, I just don't think that happens. I just, yeah, I just don't see how that could be possible. There's too many complexities and intricacies and richness to who we are as humans and what we need and want and long for relationally. Like, how in the hell can one human meet all that? Like, they just can't. So it's like, it doesn't mean that a partner or a dear friend can't be a really meaningful connection. But we've got to grapple with like, they may not be able to meet me in certain kinds of ways. This partner, this friend, this family member, I mean, even our therapist, right? Like there are things that I am really good at as a therapist, and there are things that I'm not. And when like people approach me like about certain kinds of things, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't be my first pick for that. Maybe there's some things where it's like, yeah, I'm okay, but I think there would be other people that would be stronger at that. And then there are some things where it's like, no, I need to refer you to someone. Like I don't think it wouldn't be good for you or for me. Like it wouldn't be a good fit. Like, I'm not able to provide that, or meet you in that particular way. So yeah, so again, as I often say in my videos, like these things require us to be with sadness. There is a repeated grief, of, yeah, these past places where we have been hurt, and how that can linger, right? And how that then inclines us, at least unconsciously, to, okay, I'm going to I'm going to keep half asking in all my various relational contexts, not fully ask, not fully, reveal like, hey, I would really love it if, I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday, a new contact I'm making about basically an activity I may get involved in, and so I was really trying to practice this. I was trying to put all of my asks out there and trying to do it very kindly and open-handedly of just, like, look, I don't know what's possible here. I don't know what you're up for, but I'm wondering about this. I'm wondering about this. Here's some of my interests. Here's kind of like what I was hoping might come from, engaging in this activity with you, being taught by you. Because I really wanted to respect their time and respect my own. And so I had to be able to sit with the possibility that they might say, yeah, I can't really do that, or I'm not interested in doing that. And it honestly was kind of mixed. Like I enjoyed the conversation. They're a good person. I think I may work with them on some things, on this activity. I haven't totally decided. I'm still processing. it's honestly not going to be exactly what I was originally thinking of. And so that's part of my evaluating is like, okay, well, it is going to touch that original goal, but not in the way that I thought, right? And so I think that there's some things I hadn't been thinking about. It's like, well, that I think I could be interested in that, and I think that could be good for me and nourishing and my development and whatnot. And so I'm having to really sit with like, okay, I don't know, how do I feel about this? And like, there's some disappointment because it's like it's not lining up exactly like I wanted, but there's also curiosity and I'm intrigued because it's like, okay, there's some possibilities here I hadn't really thought about, and like those could be good. And and it's still, the original goal is still embedded. It's just not in the way that I originally thought. And so this illustrates actually what I'm describing here, the ways in which if we can bear the vulnerability of doing a full ask, not a half ask, not half asking it, if we can bear the vulnerability of doing a full ask or a fuller ask, at least, then we're creating opportunity for more good. So, with this interaction with this person, like I've created opportunity for some richness I didn't know to ask for, because I was able to bear the vulnerability of it and be straightforward with them, and they were straightforward with me about kind of some of where they're at and their priorities and their limits, and so I'm still digesting. Do I want to move forward with this or not? But I at least have on the table some possibilities that could end up being really, really, really good for me, and which weren't totally on my radar, honestly, and so yeah, I think this is a principle that I experience again and again and again. Is that like if I can bear the vulnerability of engaging in a more full ask, a more honest ask. Being more honest with myself of like, this is actually what I really want, or what I really need. And if I can bear the pain, the facing the past pain, right? If I can bear the vulnerability, the potential of present pain, future pain, then the world opens up to me and opens up to all of us in really beautiful ways, and things that we didn't, like I said before, we didn't even know to ask for, didn't even know that like, oh, that could be really freaking cool. Like, wow, okay. Like, I need to process some more. Like, because it's like that is like some different things than what I've been thinking about. But yeah, I've just had so many areas of my life like this where, as I worked through my pain, as I was able to get more honest about what matters to me, like it's like, the world has expanded in this like really bountiful way. So I guess this is my invitation to you, the viewer, is number one, right, to really be paying attention to where are you half asking your relationship, right? Like really try to notice. That's the first step. Can you notice the places where you're holding back? You're not being totally honest with yourself and with your partner or with a friend or family member, some kind of loved one, right? You're not being fully honest about like, this is actually what I really want. This is what I really wanted to say. This is what I was really hoping for. Like, you got to go beyond. You got to notice all these ways that you're hinting, that you're like, oh yeah, so, I noticed such and such, is on sale, or I noticed, there's this thing happening downtown, right? Like, you got to go beyond that. We got to work toward so first we got to notice. And then the goal is, I want to inch my way towards saying, hey, I would like to go do such and such. Would you like to come with me? Would you come with me? I would love to have you come with me. That would be really special. That would be really meaningful. I would really enjoy your presence, right? This is like me think about dating. Dating is like totally about this, right? And a lot of times in dating, people are like half asking all over the place. They're quarter asking, like, because it's like, I don't want to really put on the table like what I want, because it's like, well, what happens? You'll get scared, you'll run away. What if they reject me? All these kinds of things. But healthy dating that's like, gonna lead to like a potentially, better outcome. Like, we're gonna like really put out there like, hey, this is what's important to me. And I don't mean that in like, hey, here's my list of demands, and are you gonna measure up or get the hell out of my way because I'm gonna move on? Like, but just like as we're getting to know somebody, whether in dating or, in marriage, or some kind of long-term relationship, or we're always still getting to know each other. Like, I don't care how long you've been together. I mean, I've got couples that are in like their 60s and 70s that it's like they are reaching new levels of intimacy. They're just like, shit, we didn't even know we could know each other like this. Like it's like, yeah, it's like starting all over, right? Like it's like, in the best sense, of the word, of the phrase. So yeah, really start by trying to notice, and then try to stretch yourself. Like try to pick, one of the many places where you're half asking, because there's, as you start to pay attention to this, you'd be like, shit, I'm half asking like all the freaking time. Like I'm never like, rarely am I like totally, telling somebody how I really feel, right? So as you'll start noticing, and then try to pick a few and say, okay, I'm going to circle back to that and say, hey, what I really wanted to say was blah, blah, blah. What I really was hoping was, such and such. And then, yeah, sit with your emotions about it. And actually, I should say, sit with your emotions on the front end before you even do it, because as you think about doing it, it's going to be really scary. And you're going to feel all sorts of resistance, because if it was easy, you'd be doing it already, and we'd be talking about something else, a different area where you're stuck, right? So pay attention to the resistance, to, all the reasons that your insides are like, don't do this, it's too scary, da-da-da. Try to find somebody you can talk to about that, a counselor, a good friend, a mentor, maybe a religious, mentor, if that's your context. But yeah, like, and just share with them, like, I am so scared of like being honest about that this matters to me. I'm so scared of like being honest about this want, this desire, this need. And like notice the sadness, notice the fear, the shame. There can be shame about our wants. That's a whole nother, gosh, we can have a whole nother video about that. But yeah, try to let them be with you. Try to experience being comforted in this place that's so scary and so overwhelming. That's part of what gradually makes it less intimidating, is that you're facing the thing that feels unfaceable. So yeah, do that little by little with yourself, turning towards those parts of yourself. Do that with, somebody, a mentor, a therapist, some kind of helper person in your life, someone who can be there for you in this way. And then try to work towards, little by little, actually practicing in your relationships, your various contexts, friendships, partner relationship, whatever. Circling back and saying, hey, what I really was feeling was this. Like I was too scared to say it at the time, but I actually really, really wanted you to, have joined me in going to the movie. And I just hinted at it because it was like, I was afraid you'd say no, and that really hurts, is really disappointing, even though I'm trying to believe you're not trying to hurt me, but for me, it's a real sensitive area. And yeah, there's kind of no way to, we have to just kind of slowly work at it, right? Like there's no shortcut for any of this. There's no pill. So it's like we practice. So we practice first, the inner part, of like turning towards the pain, the fear, the shame, the sadness, having somebody with us in that, experiencing we can be supported, we can be met, we can be comforted, we can be nourished in that place. And then from there, starting to practice, like actually trying to do something different. Initially circling back, and then we're working towards eventually being able to do it in real time. Being able to do like I was doing yesterday, where in real time I'm saying, well, this is what I was thinking. I'm going to risk that this person might be like, wow, that's a lot to ask, or whatever, any kind of numbers of, negative reactions, but trying to really put it out there. And I try to do that with my friends, and I have my own growing edge. So it's like, it's not that I'm definitely not perfect at fully asking. Like I've got my own half asking, places that I got to keep working on, where I have to becoming more conscious of. It's like, gosh, right. Even there, like I thought I was aware, but like as I'm, maybe something happens where I realize I'm really freaking disappointed. I did not know there was that much going on inside of me until it, they said no or whatever, or they didn't respond. And it's like, oh, apparently there's some stuff there, right? Like, and then I have to, turn towards it and try to, sort out what that's about, try to help it heal, try to be with the pain. Um, so have compassion for yourself, but play with this language. I think that the half asking is really fun, because of again how it, the double entendre of half assing things, and we all half ass stuff, and we half ask. But yeah, like let this be like, see if this can be a way that you can be a little playful with yourself, maybe with your partner. Now don't do this. I think one caveat is like, don't turn this into like a blame thing of like, hey, you're always half asking. Like, no, this is for your speaking of yourself. So no turning this against each other. Okay, no weaponizing of this. But this is a way of, it can become a shared language of like, hey, I was half asking it, and like, here's more of what I wished I would have said the first time, or wish I would have asked for or voiced or been vulnerable about, and I'm really scared in telling you, but I know I need to, because I need to practice this. And that can become a really lovely thing, like like with this couple that I was working with here recently. Like, they're starting to develop this category, and they can talk about it together, and they can acknowledge that, like, yeah, I get scared of asking too. It's so vulnerable, and like, I wish that you could just get it. And we all do, right? And it's wonderful when sometimes somebody just gets us, but part of growing and maturing is grappling with that. Ultimately, I'm responsible for getting it, and I'm responsible for bringing it forth into the world. Like, this is part of becoming an adult. I don't say that in any kind of shaming way, but it's just how things are, right? Like, if we stay in that place of, okay, well, I'm only going to do partner relationships where they totally get me. It's like, that's actually a parent-child dynamic that you're seeking there. Like, that's bumped my keyboard. That's childhood, right? Like, we're longing for that perfect attunement, when the parent just seems to know what we need. Because that is the role of parents. Not that parents get it perfectly, but part of the role of parents is to help us make sense of what am I feeling, and help us like develop language for that, and be able to, understand ourselves. And of course, we all have ways that we don't get enough of that, and there's wounding and gaps and stuff. So, but yeah, adult relationships are never meant to be that entirely, right? Like, there is a wonderful, like, we do get to know each other more. And so there is like, a knownness and a knowingness, and a shared quality. And that's wonderful and lovely, but there's always going to be things we don't know. And if we're stretching ourselves and deepening our relationships, our friendships, our partner relationship, then there's going to be places where there's like, how can our partner know us? We don't even know ourselves here yet. Like, we're just starting to get to know ourselves. And so ultimately that's our responsibility. And the freedom in that is, well, we can do something about that, right? Like the cost of, if I keep myself stuck in like, oh, I'm only going to seek friendships and a partner relationship where it's like, they totally get me. Well, it's like, I'm going to really limit my world. Like, I'm going to live in a tiny little box, because the reality is nobody's going to totally get me, all the time. Or even most of the time. And it's all, yeah, as I said, it's my job to help others know me. And I have to start by knowing myself. So yeah, this is hard. It's vulnerable. It's not necessarily how we want it to be, but it's how it is. And the good news is that we can do this. We can grow in these ways. Like, thank goodness, like, we can grow in these ways. It's amazing how much capacity we have. Like, I have been so, again, hearkening back to what I was sharing earlier, it has been shocking to me to realize, like, man, I was holding back so much. I was half-asking so much in so many of my relationships, in places that now I can more fully ask. I can more fully acknowledge, wow, I really love this person. I really care about this human being. They are so important to me. I am so grateful for them. Even just in smaller things where it's like, oh, what a lovely moment this is that I'm experiencing. And I can just let that matter, and I can drink that in and be nourished by it. And it's like, what a bit of good in the midst of a world that is beautiful and also broken. Like, there's a lot of ugly in our world, right? But there is so much beauty and nourishment if we can bear to risk being vulnerable enough to open up and ask, and more fully ask. It doesn't mean we're going to get every single thing or the fullness of everything that we ask for, because I don't. Like, honestly, I don't think I get the fullness of anything that I ask for. But I am way more nourished than I have ever been, and it is connected to this whole pattern of I keep pressing into the vulnerability. I keep doing the hard work, with the sadness and the grief and the shame and the fear and all the things, right? And so it enables me to be more and more open to the good that is there. It's not perfect, it's not complete, but it is way more than I ever thought possible. And so this is the invitation for all of us. Is that like won't you come and be nourished, right? Like so yeah, I want that for all of us. I want that for the whole world. I want for all of us to keep growing beyond our half asking, and grow into being able to bear the risk, the vulnerability of more fully asking for what we want and need, even though we're not going to get all of it, but we'll get more than we think we can, and certainly more than the limited bit that we limit ourselves to when we only half ask. So, well, until next time, peace be with you.